PBS is currently launching their Great American Read for the summer, which is this program where they went to a public vote for 100 books that were the most likely to actually get people reading because it's kind of falling out of favor again, it seems. And as someone who is now officially a novelist myself, I have great interest in this, and I want to do anything I can to get people reading again. So I figured I've read 41 of the 100 books on their list, which puts me ahead of everyone else I've talked to about this. And I figured I'd do videos on each one of them and how I encounter them, what they meant to me, and basically just why you should check them out. So, first up, going in alphabetical order here, is 1984 by George Orwell from 1948. He got the year just by mixing up those numbers, you can tell. And it's also the year I was born, so I already had a pretty good connection to it. Now, George Orwell was not very well known for his fiction writing throughout much of his life. He was a reporter and a critic, and he wrote essays. And it was only really towards the last few years that his novels really got very well known. So they stand as kind of these seeds that never really had the chance to grow to much of anything, but they do stand very well on their own, and 1984 is his big crowning achievement. And it's one of those books that really the world he created is kind of more important than the actual story. It's the classic example of the dystopia, the world where basically everything is the worst it can be and everyone's lives are miserable. And in this case, it's because the government is really clamping down on everything. They are not watching you all the time. That's kind of a misconception about this book. The problem is you never know when they're watching you because they always are sometimes. And we don't really know how the world got this way. It's not really explained that much. And what we do get, we can't trust because everything you see is propaganda. Wonder how that could possibly relate to our world right now. And we well, I first read this book in high school. It wasn't an assigned reading. I just looked it up on my own after I read Orwell's other like big well-known book, Animal Farm, in eighth grade. But that really got me interested in it, and like my textbooks kept writing it up as the great dystopian work, so I figured I should check it out. And I was really glad I did because this thing, it sticks with you, and you just have to look at how many words Orwell came up with that we still use today. Things like unperson and newspeak and memory hole. Um, and of course, the big one, Big Brother, which has the honor of being the title of a trashy reality show eventually. But part of the real genius of it is that we can't trust anything we hear throughout the whole thing, really, because it's all just what the government wants you to know. We never even find out if there is an actual person in charge of all this, or if it's just this committee who invented this like figure of Big Brother to keep people in line. And it's really to its benefit that we don't find out because we're in the shoes of our hero, Winston Smith, who is like in charge of rewriting newspapers to reflect what the government wants him to say, which he has to keep doing again and again because they keep changing what they want him to say. And he is secretly questioning everything about this, but of course he can't really say anything until he finds some allies. But the question is, can he trust them? And it's very much I think, to Orwell's credit, that you can't really tell much about his own politics from reading this. For the record, Eric Blair, to use his preferred name, it's even the only one on his tombstone, was a very committed socialist, but he also was not blind at all to the major flaws of the people at the time who really represented that philosophy. You just have to look at Animal Farm, which is this very one-to-one allegory of the rise of the Soviet Union, where he's basically saying, guys, I'm on your side here. You had to get rid of those people, but this is what you did wrong after that. And just through this whole thing, there's no real hope that any of this can change, and that still stays through right up to the end. The final line is one of the great like downbeat endings ever. I won't give it away. I'm trying to remain spoiler free as much as possible through all of these, but if you know anything about this book, and even if you don't, you can probably tell from its reputation that how things end up. And really, the biggest scene that sticks with me is this one where a government kind of interrogator tries to make Winston sane, as he puts it, by being willing to admit that sometimes 2 plus 2 doesn't equal 4. And he's very polite about the whole thing, and he comes across like he's honestly trying to help Winston. And for all we know, he actually thinks he is. But that's the trouble you run into when you can't trust anything, and there's all kinds of alternative facts, as it were. But it's a book that's really grown more prophetic as time has gone on, and it won't really pick you up at all. It's very much a downer, but I very much recommend you check it out. It's something that everyone should read at least once, and it will very really clue you in on maybe taking a closer look at the world around you and questioning things that you're told not to question. And I imagine Orwell himself would be very happy with that legacy. Next up, the book that won a Pulitzer Prize years after its author's suicide, A Confederacy of Dunces.